Hello, we've come down to Westminster. What you can hear in the background if you're listening to the podcast is the sound of the rejoin the EU, I don't know what you call it, stationary flotilla that has situated itself on a traffic island in Westminster. We are here today because hundreds of disability campaigners have descended on the Houses of Parliament to protest the upcoming cuts to disability benefits that the government is going to be voting on in the summer. This is potentially a huge cut for people. I wish I was talking about something less serious with that music on the background, I'm going to be honest with you. But this is a potentially life-changing cut for a lot of disabled people in the UK. This is a huge and significant issue, and I'm really excited that we're going to be talking to some old friends of the show about what's going on today.
I'm Meg Thomas. I'm a community organiser with Disabled People Against Cuts and a coordinator of a group called the Coalition Against Benefit Cuts.
Meg, can you explain to us what distinguishes this? What's a mass lobby event as opposed to a normal protest? What does this involve?
So a mass lobby essentially is where a group of people coordinate to meet with their MPs at the same time. Today we've had some people who have pre-arranged meetings to work for a set time, and some people who are here to do something called green carding. And green carding is essentially when you come into Westminster Hall, you have the right as someone's constituent to request a meeting with your MP. And one of the reasons that we're doing this is that one of the things that we always hear is that people need to hear from their constituents.
Yeah.
People need to hear from their constituents and understand what some of the problems with the post cuts are and how it's going to be impacting their constituents on the ground.
Yeah.
And so we said, okay, we will bring the constituents to you.
Please tell us your name and why you've come down to Westminster today.
I'm Natasha Hurst. I'm here from Cardiff. I'm a freelance photojournalist, and I receive PIP. I've been on employment support allowance in the past, and I also receive access to work support. And I'm here because the proposals are going to harm disabled people tremendously. I'll be one of those people affected, but so many more disabled people are going to be put into poverty, real hardship. It does absolutely nothing to address all of those systemic barriers that we face in our day-to-day lives.
So my name's Paul Jones, and I've come here today to represent a number of ME charities who are concerned about what the government is doing with the reforms and the revision of the social security policy in the UK.
How do these reforms specifically impact people with ME?
Well, ME is, for the majority, a varying and fluctuating condition. So 25% live with severe ME or very severe ME, where they're bedbound, but the remaining 75% are moderate to mild.
Right.
So we believe that with the government's change to PIP, including a disability threshold of the 4 points, that the majority of people living with ME will be affected.
We ventured outside and immediately the heavens have opened. I'm here with Dermot. Dermot, tell us a little bit about why you decided to come down to Westminster today.
The original work is fight against the Labour government on the welfare fund, and it's going to be imposed upon disabled people across the UK because it is going to push us deeper in the poverty. It will not help or support anybody that's disabled and to work if they're able to. It will not do that.
So I've just been out in Westminster Hall. It's a very excited mood out there. There's loads of people that have shown up for this mass lobby, and there are lots of MPs who are coming down to meet with them. So there is real engagement between MPs and the people who are here for the mass lobby. It is inspiring. This is direct democratic action. This is bringing the voice of the constituencies to the Houses of Parliament. And this is exactly the kind of event that we want to cover on this show, because it shows you that there are people working hard to actually move the dial on some of these issues. I'm thrilled to be joined by Ellie Chowns from the Greens. Ellie, what are your constituents saying to you about the proposed disability reforms?
They're incredibly worried. I mean, I've had shed loads of emails from constituents and such personal stories, people really kind of explaining in detail how the proposed changes are going to affect their lives. And I've just been out there in Westminster Hall talking to so many people who they're just so articulate, explaining what a problem it is, this squeeze on PIP, this change to disability benefits reform. Because, of course, the whole point of PIP personal independence payment.
Yeah.
It's about helping people to be as independent as possible. I was just talking to a lady who was saying, look, this is absolutely madness. This benefit is the thing that helps me to work. Without it, I'm going to be struggling even more. And people like her, they're still going to need support, right?
Yeah.
But the requirement to provide that is going to fall on local authorities or whatever. And so what you're seeing is a bunch of government reforms, proposals that are kind of, they're being marketed under this label of we want to help people into work. But actually, PIP is an in-work benefit for many people, right?
Yeah.
Already. And the changes to the benefits, the squeeze on the benefits is coming first, and then there's a bit of help promised, maybe with work-related support kind of later down the line. That's completely the wrong way to do it. The fact is that if somebody's got an impairment, if they've got a disability, it costs them extra to do the things that you and I might take for granted.
Yeah.
We really do have a responsibility as a society, as a community, to provide the support that people need to be able to have the same opportunities that, you and I might have in terms of access to work opportunities, or indeed social leisure opportunities, etc. And so I'm really, really frustrated by what the government is doing here. And the other thing about it is it's just so kind of wrong-headed, really, because the government's kind of saying, the public finance is terribly difficult. We've kind of got to find money from somewhere. We've got to make these difficult decisions. And it's like, there's an easy decision that they could make, right? They could tax extreme wealth and generate all of the money that is needed to support people with disabilities properly, to support public services properly, and to actually even up the country into the bargain as well. So it's unbelievably frustrating.
We're recording this on the day that Keir Starmer at PMQs announced the start of the process of a U-turn on the winter fuel payments. I'm very, very careful with how I use that language, because it's not a full U-turn yet. He's announced to the back seat that he's possibly contemplating the U-turn.
Yeah, he's rolling the pitch. That's it.
Does that give you cause for optimism on something like this? That there's a possibility that if we show and display enough public hostility towards something, we can get this Labour government to U-turn on it? So,
I welcome the fact that he's inching towards making a U-turn on it, definitely. I wouldn't say it makes me feel optimistic, because it's like if the government does 100 things wrong and then on one of them they say, oh, sorry, maybe we went a little bit too far.
True.
Like, you got to welcome that. But actually, there's still 99 that are really, really problematic, right?
On reforms to PIP, the Greens are united on this.
Absolutely.
Do you have a sense of how many Labour MPs you've managed to bring with you?
The Labour MPs are so many of them are really, really embarrassed by this. Actually, it's the same as kind of with winter fuel and several other things. There are so many Labour colleagues who are thinking, they really recognise that it's not what they got into politics for.
Yeah.
This takes us to the problem, one of the many problems with the way our politics works, right, which is the whipping system.
Yes.
So if you're part of a big party, you've got a whip, literally, who's shoving you down the yes lobby for a government policy.
Yeah, I don't think sometimes people realise how literal you're being when you describe that. There have been, especially in the last couple of years, specific examples of whips literally physically moving people.
Practically, yeah. Mainly I think it's done on kind of WhatsApp. In face-to-face conversations, and your life won't be worth living if you don't vote for this thing. But I very much hope that the combination of internal pressure within Labour from people who recognise this is completely the wrong direction, plus the external pressure from people like have been organised to be in Westminster today with Disability Rights UK. It's a huge lobby. People are so articulate about the damaging effect that this is going to have on their lives, plus the opposition that people like myself are able to provide within the chamber, kind of asking questions, putting government on the spot, really, really holding them to account, kind of embarrassing them there. All of those it's a multi-pronged thing. And that is basically how political change happens.
I'm here with Labour MP and friend of the show, I dare say, Nadia Whittam. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This is exciting. I've never really been in this building before, and so I have no frame of reference, but it's quite exciting to see all the activists actually here and MPs meeting with them. I don't want to over-romanticise what's going on here, but this is kind of our democracy sort of at its best, right? It's constituents coming to Parliament.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important that we've got a huge mass lobby today in Parliament, because it's disabled people telling their MPs directly, this is how these benefit cuts are going to impact my life.
Yeah.
These are the real life consequences of your decisions. And that makes it impossible for for us to ignore the consequences
Yeah.
of the choices that the government is making. And let's be clear, they are choices. These cuts are choices.
Yeah.
And we could be making different choices. The Sunday Times Rich List came out earlier this week.
Yeah.
And it showed that 50 of the UK's richest families own more wealth than 50% of the population. Like, if we're going to talk about trimming the fat, let's start with them.
Yeah.
Let's introduce a wealth tax. It's popular, it's necessary. Let's get on and do it.
And in terms of the disability cuts, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people who are here to participate in the lobby, and they're really trying to get the message across. This is really going to adversely affect the day-to-day lives of hundreds of thousands of people in this country, right?
Yeah. These are the biggest disability benefit cuts on record.
Right.
We're talking about taking money away from some of the poorest people in our society during a cost of living crisis. You can call that what you want, but in reality, this is austerity 2.0.
Yeah.
So for people who are no longer eligible for PIP, they will lose an average of £4,500 a year. That is going to increase suffering, increase poverty. It will cost people their lives.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating when I say that. We know that because similar cuts have already cost people their lives.
Keir Starmer has suggested that there's going to be a U-turn happening on the winter fuel payments for pensioners. Does that give you cause for optimism that actually if we show the kind of will of the constituents and the electorate, that you can actually get some movement out of the Labour Party on this specific issue as well?
I think it shows that public pressure is finally working. Change doesn't come from like MPs asking nicely for it.
Yeah.
It comes from people coming together, building a mass movement that puts so much pressure on the government and on political parties and people in power that they can't ignore them. And that's what people are doing today in this mass lobby of Parliament against the proposed disability benefit cuts.
And do you have a sense, with amongst your colleagues in the Labour Party, of what the size of a possible rebellion on this issue could be?
I think the rebellion will be huge, and it will come from all parts of the party. Over 40 of us signed a public letter to the Prime Minister. I was one of those. But then a further about 100 MPs signed a separate private letter, and there wasn't much crossover between the signatories.
Right, okay.
So we're talking like certainly triple digits.
Yeah.
And I hope that it doesn't get to the point where we need a rebellion. I hope that the government just drops these plans as the kind of inhumane and economically unnecessary measures that they are. And I say economically unnecessary because they won't raise much money, they will cause immeasurable harm, and we could just make different choices.
And your different choices, you're talking about things like wealth taxes, reforming the capital gains tax system. There are levers that the government can pull here, right?
Exactly, and these are really moderate wealth taxes. I mean, I'd like us to go much further, but I think we should all be able to agree on some of the most moderate wealth taxes, like equalising capital gains and income tax.
Yeah.
Why should you have to pay more tax on the money that you earn by working than on assets that you
Unfathomable
own?
to me. Unfathomable.
That's ridiculous. And I
Even
think
Nigel
as well,
Lawson was in favour of that. It seems to be two things that I'm in agreement with Nigel Lawson on: his daughter and equalising capital gains tax with income. It's really important to state that there are alternatives available to Keir Starmer and the government on this issue, right?
Exactly. And we can't go to people and say, okay, you're losing an average of £4,500 a year because you've been deemed no longer eligible to claim PIP. But at least the government was able to meet its fiscal rules. Doesn't that make you feel better? No.
This is not very Labour, is it? Like, I'm doing my best to not get you in trouble here, and that's always what I'm trying to do. But this is not what I would call a core Labour value, from my understanding of what the Labour Party is and should be, right?
I'm not going to spin it. Obviously, it's not a very Labour thing to do. Was it Ed Balls who said that it wasn't, that these disability cuts weren't a very Labour thing to do? Well, he's from a different tendency in the Labour Party to me. I agree with him.
Yeah. Nadia Whittam, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was I thought you were closer, and then I realised how short my arm was.
Yeah, for people listening, Nadia tapped me like you would tap a child that had done a good job on their end of term spelling test. It was really like you were like, well done on doing, you know what, well done on doing a basically competent interview.
That's not what I meant.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. We're on our way out of Parliament now. The consultation is still going on. There's still MPs out there. They're still talking to the campaigners from the various charities and pressure groups. The really important thing to stress is there is time for MPs to change their mind on this. There is time for the government to move away from these payments to the welfare system. You know, we spoke to so many people who are living with disabilities that not a single one of them had a good thing to say about these reforms. And I think there is a real lack of clarity, specifically for people with ME, about what these reforms actually involve. I will say that the positive that I'm taking from this is it was really inspiring to see that there is a lever that you can pull within our odd, arcane democratic system that forces MPs to come into contact with their constituents in the Houses of Parliament. It's very much a case of sort of bringing democracy to government, and I found that genuinely really inspiring.